All right, Jim. Let's start by introducing our audience to yourself as well as to Mason.
Great. Yeah. So I'm Jim Xiao, founder and CEO of Mason. We started just over 5 years ago with the aim to build the smart device platform for innovators to take over industries. And so when you think about Square, Ring, Peloton, there's been a proliferation of these smart hardware companies that have come to life. And we want to make it easier for a founder with an idea to make that happen. And so we provide a hardware library of designs. We provide the software tooling. We provide the integrated services like fulfillment telecom, so that all you have to do is really build an application to go to market, and we help you through the rest of it. So we're really the only fully managed infrastructure that can help someone take an idea of a smart hardware product and turn it into life faster than anyone else.
So would you categorize yourselves as a platform as a service? How do you position?
Yeah, we think of ourselves as mobile infrastructure as a service. So we think about AWS pioneering infrastructure as a service by combining all the compute into the cloud.
Sure.
You see what Twilio has done with introducing mobile services to developers. We're merging the two into mobile infrastructure as a service, where now a developer can stand up, hundreds of thousands of gigabytes of compute all on the edge across 50, 60 different countries without having to ship a box themselves.
So how many developers are building applications on your infrastructure?
Right now we have hundreds of developers building different projects. We have dozens of different customers in production, especially around healthcare and government, where we're really active.
Okay. And what is your business model?
So our platform, the way we charge is license plus usage. So customers will pay a license for various different designs within our hardware library. And then they use different services like telecom or logistics that are attached to it. So, for instance, some of the top pharma companies are using Mason to change over from paper and pencil into electronic data capture for whether it's cancer studies or allergy studies. And they're using Mason technology so that it's all they have to do is essentially build an application to survey their patients. And we deploy it for them across, about 50 or 60 different countries now.
Okay. And are your customers mainly enterprise customers?
Yes. We focus on mid-market. We're just getting into more of that enterprise, $1 billion plus market cap. Our strategy has been really interesting in focusing on the software companies, the software development companies that services all the hospitals or the pharma companies or the government agencies, and that's allowed us to go to market really quickly.
So let's talk about use cases and some of those specific applications. Let's start with whatever is your highest revenue generator currently. What is that application? Who is the customer? How are you going to market with it? And what are the details of that particular application?
Yeah, one of our larger customers is servicing government agencies. So about 1,400 government agencies from the federal down to the local level. And we're helping them transform, decade-old technology when it comes to ankle bracelets, and helping the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security turn ankle bracelets into smartwatches, and then be able to provide additional services for our immigrant community, for our parolee community, some of our most vulnerable community. When you think about it, you and I, we've experienced the iPhone or the Android device you have in your pocket for quite some time now. But how do we take some of the guts of that and put it in a way where some of our most needed communities can use that technology, backed by various government agencies to, for instance, seek asylum or add mobile banking services or find jobs, especially given the climate today.
So now what is the differentiator? Like if it's a, comparable to the Apple iWatch, would it not make sense for your customer to build an app on the Apple iWatch? What is the case for using your technology versus building an app on Apple iWatch?
Great question. It really boils down to control. So you take, for instance, the folks at Johnson & Johnson or Novartis or Lilly, and you ask them, okay, why exactly the same question. Hey, you need to do another clinical study. Why not run it on the Apple Watch? Well, it turns out Apple is very much known for being its walled garden. Apple is very much known for keeping its user data, its consumer data to themselves. And so this provides a lot of challenge, especially if you're a top drug company and top pharma company, and you want to be able to, relay back to the FDA all the different endpoints of data, all the raw data. And especially if a study goes good or bad, you're able to pinpoint the data set without having to use paper, pencil, or some other instrument, right? And so now the challenge with Apple's devices is because Apple is really building a controlled, consumer-oriented experience, they're not really thinking about how do I build the best patient experience when it comes to in their homes. So when you talk to a pharma company, they're really looking for solutions around remote patient management of these clinical trials, phase 1, 2, 3, all the way to approval, phase 4, using a lineup of devices where they can control, right? They don't want to use Apple's iOS. They want to have their own operating system that can be supported for 5+ years, that can be certified for various countries. The supply chain is designed not to switch devices every year, but to actually make it so that they can collect data in a reliable and stable manner. And at the same time, be able to go all the way down to the driver level and collect some of that data that's very raw.
Interesting. Okay, very good. Very good. Now, so you're saying that you do all the logistics of distribution of these devices as well, manufacturing and logistics of these devices as well, yes?
Yeah, and it kind of boils down to what Apple has done really well, right? They've been able to marry hardware and software together. So even though they may not have the best hardware or the best software separately, it's the marriage of the two that makes it so powerful. And so for us, we want to democratize that. We want to democratize Apple's playbook and provide that, end-to-end solution, starting with the supply chain, where we're instead of providing a consumer mass production supply chain, we're giving enterprises, companies, the ability to own their own elastic supply chain and to be able to call that via an API so they don't have to stand up a massive hardware supply chain team and get delivered exactly the right hardware solution to wherever it needs to go. So that's the logistics piece, right? And so when you think about the two together, having enough hardware, enough gigabytes and enough, RAM and ROM in the field, enough processing power in the field, that's kind of like the S3 when it comes to AWS. And when you think about the logistics services, that's kind of like the EC2 when it comes to AWS, right? And so what we're doing with logistics is the ability for a customer to be able to send, one piece of compute out into the field or all the way up to 100,000 plus, as you've seen in some of the government and healthcare customers of ours.
Mm-hmm. And talk to me about data. One of the IoT points that comes up in our discussions all the time is a lot of the internet-connected devices throw out a lot of data. Now, in the use cases that you have described, these are not necessarily big data use cases, but do you also have customers who are doing big data use cases?
Definitely collecting a variety of data. That's really important for, whether it's Medicare reimbursements or being able to make sure your doctor has the latest and greatest info on you. So, for example, a number of our devices are actually used as a hub in the homes of our elderly grandparents for data collection on behalf of their hospital systems. So when the pandemic happened, it really made it hard for folks to go into the hospital for elective surgeries or for non-COVID related symptoms. And so what our technology enabled is to act as the hub and connect with a number of different accessories like scales and blood pressure cuffs and smart pill dispensers, et cetera. And what we've learned from the space is that, wow, can you believe that some of these folks, some of the largest folks, are just sourcing their accessories from Amazon and cobbling the solutions together, right? So they're running out of stock. They don't know how to get the right piece of data from the scale without talking to the right manufacturer because they just went under, through consolidation. So there's a number of things we're doing and thinking about, okay, how do we provide a product suite for remote patient management that makes it really easy where everyone can look in the industry and say, okay, that's the set of tools I need to go mine any sort of patient data when it comes to within their home or on the edge.
But these are all discrete and specialized, functional equipment, like the smart pill dispenser, for example, is in its own right a piece of equipment that has to be designed and deployed specifically. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, our approach to hardware is a little bit different than your typical consumer player. We think of it as very much a Lego strategy. So if you build the different common componentry for low power, medium power, and high power performance, then you can actually build an ecosystem of various devices really quickly. Because then all you're doing is just changing the industrial design, which is just the plastic wrapper around the printed circuit board and the chipset and all the other good stuff. So the way we think about it is if we build the largest set of Lego pieces for customers, they can actually go to market so much faster than if they were to build it themselves. And that's a challenge today, right? If you were to build a smart hardware company or a smart product company today, like a Square, Ring, or Peloton, you would have to design from that circuit board from scratch on up, whereas we already save you, 70, 80% of that time by giving you pieces right off the shelf that you can start connecting together.
So, no, I understand that part. I guess I was trying to understand your specific use case that you just talked about of elderly patient monitoring, where you offered a bunch of different functions. So are you saying that your customers who are doing remote patient monitoring or remote patient servicing are providing all of those functionalities like pill dispensers and, blood pressure monitor, whatever, within a custom device they're building on top of your hardware?
Yeah, and so we allow them then to just focus on the software, right? Building that, even if you raise tens of millions of dollars, or even some of our customers $100 million plus, it's pretty challenging. So what we allow them to do is free up the resources so they don't have to think about building the custom Atom bits, but just focus on building the software bits. And that's been a tremendous help, right? Imagine now, instead of having to build your application on top of Apple's rules or Samsung's rules, you get to create your own rules, and now your developers can unlock features or technology that they didn't have access to before. So I'll give you an example, right, where our smartwatch has more sensors packed on it than the Apple Watch. It's essentially a mini smartphone on your wrist. It's got a front-facing camera. It's got SpO2 oxygen sensors. It's got PPG and ECG for various heart rate monitoring, and it's also got a skin temperature reader. So combined, you really have a really powerful computer the size of a watch that you can place just about on your wrist, on your belt clip, or even as a lanyard. So customers that are using this are not just like transforming government agencies. Okay, think about how do we apply this now for the Department of Defense, for Marines during training, but also when you think about these clinical studies, that same Lego piece can be utilized for clinical studies. Hey, how do I help grandma in Florida maintain her diabetes treatment, as well as perhaps manage her latest clinical study in trying the new drug?
Got it. Maybe you want to adjust your setup again because your line is starting to break up a bit. But let me continue. What percentage of your customers or deployments are in the healthcare space, since it sounds like that's a recurring theme?
Yeah, it's definitely the on the majority side. So 60% plus of our customers are in healthcare. Although we do have customers, like I mentioned, in government and retail and hospitality.
Okay.
So, for instance, in pizza chains, helping mom and pop pizza parlors do digital ordering much faster and have a lot more control than if they were to rely on Uber Eats or DoorDash.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any startups building products on your system?
Yeah, absolutely. We have seed stage startups, just getting started, where for them, we're a blessing, right? You just raised, $1-2 million worth of funding. You're cobbling together a software engineering team to build the first application. But then, wow, just to go to market, just to get 100 doctors or 100 nurses or 100 sites online, it's going to cost you, half of your investment in terms of hardware spend, and it's pretty risky. You may not even get the money back. The hardware may not be delivered on time. It may not be customized to the specs you want. There's a lot of risk in that, right? So we eliminate it and say, hey, you know what? For $15 a month, you can get started with one of our designs. It's guaranteed to work. You'll have control over the same operating system as if you were Apple. You would have the same over-the-air technology as Tesla does to its vehicles. You would not have for the smart products and smart hardware you put out in the field using our designs. And you know that this can be supported for multiple years, 5 years plus, because we have that end-to-end control of the supply chain all the way to the logistics.
How many startups are building products on your platform?
So right now we have dozens and growing pretty quickly. Last quarter, we nearly doubled our customer base.
And what is the most interesting use case you've seen coming out of the startup world?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you take a look at some of the folks that are innovating in healthcare, it's really exciting. We have folks that are building RPM for epilepsy patients. We have folks for cardiac arrest. There's over 1 million pacemakers installed in folks all over the country, and it turns out that 60% of them don't actually need or may have not needed a pacemaker if they had enough time to actually evaluate from the doctor's side, right? So we have customers that are building essentially these like Iron Man vests that really keep you alive for 90 plus days while the doctor evaluates, and you can still go fishing and go working out without having to carry this like giant tackle box, which is the legacy technology without Mason. For me, the most exciting piece is a couple years ago, I was diagnosed with psoriasis, the skin condition where it turns out to be pretty wild, and not as bad as some of the other patients that have to undergo treatment, but it's definitely an area where it kind of woke me up into wow, I never thought that I would be an end user of our technology, but it turns out that some of the stuff that's missing on the market, like for instance, how do you do a dermatologist telemedicine study to show a patch of your skin that's really hard to get to, and if you point your smartphone to it, you can't really talk to your doctor. You can't say, hey, this itches more than this piece. She or he is not capturing that data, right, in the right way. So then they prescribe you this other random thing, and it turns out those drugs are not only really expensive for the insurance companies, but for the patients, they may not be getting the right diagnosis or treatment, right? So that's where it gets really exciting for us to start innovating. Like you think about a smart pill dispenser, look at all the pill dispensers in the market. They all stink, either way too expensive and over-engineered, or it's just something you would find on Alibaba. So what would you do if you were the top 10 healthcare systems, right? Are you going to go to Amazon for your long-term, patient adherence solution when it comes to a smart pill dispenser? So those are areas where we're able to really innovate and take the smart chipset, those fundamental Lego pieces that we're talking about, start building them into very very customized solutions for these different vertical use cases.
Very interesting. That is super, super, super interesting. And what about your company? What is the structure of your company? What kind of funding? What kind of scale are you at?
Yeah, so we back in 2019 we hit profitability coming out of our garage. We signed up a handful of different healthcare companies, and we were off to the races. And back in 2019, we raised a $25 million Series A, led by some of the pretty well-known investors in the world, including Thomas LaFont and Ariel Zuckerberg at Coatue, Hans Tung at GGB, and TJ over at Base 10. And so we put together a pretty solid group of investors, and they really believe, like, wow, even though it's tough, like you look at AWS and Azure, they had the back checkbooks of Amazon and Microsoft, right? So we instead assembled a really awesome group of investors to back us in our endeavor to build, essentially AWS for decentralized compute, or AWS for the edge. And you think about how that works. Back in the last 18 months, we've scaled our team to include essentially the ability to build a hardware company and a software company and a services company in one, and we've done it pretty lean. So in terms of the output per Mason, it's actually quite spectacular now looking back on some of the output we've been able to do with just 50, 60 employees right now.
Very good. Wonderful. I really enjoyed listening to you. I think it's a phenomenally cool offering, and I'm particularly interested in what startups are going to do on top of your platform, and what kind of apps and new companies that are going to be built on your platform. Of course, it's interesting to see what enterprises are doing with it as well. But I think because of the world that I live in, I find anything that makes startups' lives easier, and it makes it easier to innovate for small companies, very interesting and very exciting. So congratulations. Very, very cool company. Let me cut the recording, and I will chat with you for a moment.